You know what's strange? Some of the most perceptive, emotionally sharp, and quietly intelligent people don't actually feel smart. They overthink. They read too much into people. They notice things others completely miss, and sometimes wish they didn't. And growing up, no one ever told them this was intelligence, because it didn't come from books. It didn't come from school. It didn't even feel like a gift. It came from having to figure people out before people hurt you. It came from learning how to read a room before anyone raised their voice, from sensing tension before it turned into something worse, from adapting because staying unaware was never an option. Psychology has a name for this now. It's called traumatic intelligence, a rare kind of awareness shaped not by comfort, but by survival. And if this resonates with you, there's a good chance you're not too sensitive or overthinking. You just learned how to understand the world earlier than most. In this video, we're going to explore 11 signs that you might have this rare form of intelligence, and why the very things you thought were your weaknesses might actually be the reason you see so deeply. But here's the part most people don't talk about. This kind of intelligence doesn't just make you perceptive, it rewires how you experience life. You don't just see emotions, you absorb them. You don't just notice patterns, you live inside them, and sometimes your mind doesn't know how to turn it off. So while the outside world might call you insightful or mature, inside, it can feel like you're constantly scanning, analyzing, bracing. And that's why this matters. Because if you don't understand where this way of thinking comes from, you might spend years trying to fix parts of yourself that were never broken to begin with. You might call it anxiety. You might call it overthinking. You might even think something is wrong with you. But what if those patterns were actually adaptations? What if your mind isn't too much? It's just been trained to survive in environments that required more? And the truth is, once you see it that way, everything starts to shift. So let's slow this down and go deeper, because the first sign of traumatic intelligence doesn't look dramatic at all. In fact, it's something you've probably been doing your whole life without even realizing it. The first sign is this. You can walk into a room and feel everything before anyone says a word, not in a mystical way, not because you're psychic, but because something in you immediately starts scanning. You notice the slight tension in someone's shoulders, the way two people avoid eye contact, the forced tone in a, yeah, I'm fine. And while everyone else is just there, you're already piecing together what's really going on beneath the surface. Most people think this is intuition, but it's not. It's pattern recognition trained over time. At some point in your life, paying attention like this wasn't optional. It was how you stayed one step ahead of conflict, one step ahead of mood swings, one step ahead of something unpredictable. So your brain learned quietly, automatically, and now it just does it. You don't choose to read the room, you just can't not read it. The second sign is a little deeper and a little heavier. You don't just understand how people feel, you feel it with them sometimes before they even realize it themselves. You can tell when someone is struggling, even when they're smiling. You sense the shift in their energy, the subtle withdrawal, the unspoken weight. And without thinking, you adjust. Your tone softens. Your words become more careful. You start holding space, even when no one asks you to. Psychology calls this hyperempathy. But in real life, it often feels like this. You carry emotions that were never yours to begin with. Because growing up, you had to be aware of how others felt, not just to connect, but to stay safe. And over time, that awareness didn't go away. It became part of who you are. Now here's where it gets interesting, because what you've heard so far, this ability to read people, to feel deeply, that's just the surface. The next sign reveals something most people completely misunderstand about you. From the outside, it looks like you're calm under pressure. But what's really happening inside is something your brain has been practicing for years. The third sign is something people often admire about you, but rarely understand. When things fall apart, you don't. In moments where others panic, freeze, or lose control, you become clear, focused, strategic, almost strangely calm. You start thinking in steps. What needs to be done first? What matters right now? What can wait? And from the outside, it looks like strength. But from the inside, it's familiarity. Because chaos isn't new to you. Your nervous system has been here before, many times. So instead of shutting down, it activates. Psychologists sometimes describe this as stress adaptation, a brain that learned early how to function under pressure. And over time, that pressure stopped feeling like an exception. It became your baseline. The fourth sign goes even deeper. You don't just observe people, you study them. You replay conversations in your head. You analyze tone, wording, pauses, even silence. You ask yourself questions most people never think about. Why did they say it like that? What were they really feeling? What does this mean about them or about me? And sometimes it feels like your mind never really turns off. But this didn't come from nowhere. At some point, understanding people wasn't curiosity, it was necessity. Because when behavior is unpredictable, your brain tries to create patterns out of it. It tries to make sense of what doesn't make sense. And in doing that, you became someone who sees beneath the surface. Now pause for a second. Everything you've heard so far, reading the room, feeling deeply, staying calm under pressure, analyzing people, most people would call these strengths. But if you've lived with them, they don't always feel that way. And that's where the next signs start to shift things, because they don't just show how your mind works. They reveal how it has shaped who you are. The fifth sign is this: you became independent earlier than you should have. You don't wait for help. You don't expect people to show up. And even when they do, part of you still feels like you have to handle things on your own. You solve problems quietly. You carry things without saying much. And people often describe you as strong, without realizing that strength was built in moments where you didn't really have a choice. When support isn't consistent, the brain adapts. It stops relying outward and starts building inward. The sixth sign: you feel everything more intensely than people around you seem to. Music hits deeper. Silence feels heavier. Injustice isn't just something you notice. It bothers you on a level you can't ignore. Even small things can stay with you longer than you expect. And sometimes you wonder, why do I feel this much when others don't? But it's not too much. It's a nervous system that has been activated 5 repeatedly, which means when you feel fully. The seventh sign is more complicated. You don't trust easily, not because you're cynical, not because you want to push people away, but because your brain learned that not every signal of safety is real. So now, you take your time, you observe, you test consistency, you watch actions more than words, and when you finally do trust someone, it's not surface level, it's deep, loyal, real. The eighth sign: rest doesn't always feel like rest. Slowing down can feel uncomfortable. Even when nothing is wrong, something in you stays alert. Your mind drifts. Your body stays slightly tense. And doing nothing can feel strangely unsafe. Because for a long time, being alert was safety. And learning how to relax now isn't automatic. It's something you have to relearn. Now here's where it all comes together. Because the 9th, 10th, and 11th signs aren't just about how you think. They're about what all of this has turned you into. And this is the part most people never fully see. The 9th sign is that you carry a quiet depth. You don't move through life casually. You notice meaning in things others overlook. You think about life, people, pain, purpose, in ways that feel heavier but also more real. The 10th sign: you've developed a kind of inner clarity, not because everything was explained to you, but because you had to figure things out on your own. And through that process, you started understanding what actually matters. And the 11th sign, the one that defines everything you've heard so far, is this: you don't let your pain be meaningless. Somewhere along the way, you made a quiet decision that what you went through wasn't just something to survive, but something to understand, to transform, to grow from. Psychology calls this post-traumatic growth, the ability to find meaning, depth, and direction after difficulty. But in real life, it just feels like this. You see the world differently now. And before we close, this is the part I want you to really sit with, because everything we've talked about, this awareness, this depth, this way of thinking, it's not just intelligence, it's adaptation. It's what your mind built to survive something it couldn't control. And yes, it made you perceptive. It made you strong. It made you see things others don't. But it also came with a cost. So the goal isn't to romanticize it. The goal is to understand it. To stop seeing yourself as too much, or too sensitive, or overthinking, and start seeing the truth. You adapted. And maybe, for the first time, you don't need to stay in survival mode anymore. If this felt uncomfortably accurate, take a moment. Because the next step isn't just recognizing these signs, it's learning how to use this awareness without letting it exhaust you. If you want, I can help you turn this into something that actually supports your life, not just explains it. So before this video ends, there's one thing I want you to remember. Not everything you had to become was meant to be permanent. Yes, you learned how to read people. You learned how to stay strong. You learned how to think deeply, feel deeply, and survive quietly. But survival and living are not the same thing. At some point, the patterns that protected you start to exhaust you. The overthinking, the constant awareness, the emotional weight you carry that no one sees. And if you're not careful, you'll keep using survival skills in places where you're finally safe. So here's the reminder. You don't have to keep proving that you can handle everything alone. You don't have to stay hyper-aware all the time. You don't have to carry every emotion in the room. And you definitely don't have to earn your worth by being the one who understands everyone else. Because the same intelligence that helped you survive can now help you do something else. Set boundaries. Choose where your energy goes. Learn when to step back instead of leaning in. And maybe most importantly, learn how to feel safe without needing to analyze everything first. If this video felt like it was describing you a little too accurately, that's not a coincidence. It just means you've been paying attention for a very long time. And maybe now, it's time to turn some of that awareness back toward yourself, not to fix who you are, but to finally take care of the part of you that had to grow up too fast. If this resonated with you, don't just scroll away. Sit with it. Because understanding yourself is one thing, but choosing to live differently after that, that's where everything actually begins. And before you leave, I want to leave you with one honest thought. I don't think there's a version of you that's completely right or completely wrong. Some parts of you were built to survive. Some parts of you are still learning how to live. And both of those things can exist at the same time. So maybe the question isn't, why am I like this? Maybe the better question is, what parts of me still need protection? And what parts of me are ready to finally feel safe? If this video felt like it understood something you've never been able to explain, you don't have to say anything big. Just leave a simple "I relate" in the comments, because sometimes realizing you're not the only one like this is where the healing actually starts. And if you want more videos that help you understand yourself without judging who you are, you already know what to do.